Economics Explained does not often talk about mysteries. It deals with facts, numbers, and charts. But today, we are starting a story that feels like it is taken straight from a financial thriller. It is a story about promises, metal, and a trap that one of the mightiest banks in the world cannot seem to escape. Look at this vault. In the mind of the public, and in the rules of finance, it should be filled with silver bars. These bars belong to people, investors, companies, funds, who paid for them. They own a simple piece of paper, a contract that says, JP Morgan holds your silver for you. It is a promise that when you ask for it, the bank will open the vault and hand you the real, physical metal. But what if the vault is not as full as it should be? What if there are more promises for silver than there are actual bars of silver to give? This is not a hypothetical question. This is the quiet crisis starting to whisper through the halls of the global silver market. And at the center of it sits a giant, JPMorgan Chase. For years, JP Morgan has been a king in the world of precious metals. After the financial crisis of 2008, new rules were made. Fewer players were allowed to control this space. JP Morgan became one of the most important authorized custodians. This means they are one of the few entities officially trusted to store and trade massive amounts of silver for the market. They became, in effect, the bank for silver itself. This was a very good business. It gave them enormous knowledge and influence over the silver price. They could buy large amounts when prices were low and sit on them. They could help set the terms of trade for everyone else. For a long time, the system worked smoothly. The paper promises, the contracts, traded hands easily. Most people never asked for the actual metal. Why would they? It is heavy, needs secure storage, and the paper promise was just as good for making trades and bets. But then, a subtle shift began. A few investors, maybe suspicious, maybe just prudent, started reading the fine print on their contracts. They saw a crucial line, the right to take physical delivery. They started to ask a simple, powerful question. Can I have my silver now? Not the paper, the real metal. And this is where our mystery deepens. When a person asks for their physical silver, the bank must get it from somewhere. It must take real bars from its vault and ship them out. But if many people start asking at once, and if the bank has sold more promises than it has metal, a problem appears. A very big problem. JP Morgan is now in a position where it is being asked, more and more, to make good on these promises, to deliver the actual goods. The whispers in the market say that the number of these promises, these silver futures contracts that are demanding delivery, is rising. And the available physical silver in the approved vaults is not rising at the same speed. So, the logical question is, why doesn't JP Morgan just go out and buy more silver to fill its vaults? If you are missing milk, you go to the store. If a car company needs steel, it buys more. This should be simple. But here's the twist. The twist that turns a simple problem into an inescapable trap. JP Morgan is so big, and the amount of silver it needs is so huge, that if it suddenly tries to buy what it needs on the open market, it will not be a simple purchase. It will be an earthquake. The moment the world's largest silver dealer starts desperately buying up tons of silver, every other trader will see it. The price will not just go up a little. It will explode. It could double, triple, or more in a very short time. And for JP Morgan, that soaring price is a disaster. It would mean paying an unimaginable fortune to cover its promises. Every dollar the price climbs costs them hundreds of millions. Their attempt to solve the problem would create a much bigger financial catastrophe for themselves. This is the edge of the trap. They must deliver silver, but trying to get that silver will bankrupt them. This is what people are calling the $60 trap. The number 60 is a symbol. It represents a price level, like $60 per ounce of silver, where the pressure becomes too great, where the math breaks down and the bank's options disappear. It is the point of no return. So, we are left with the opening scene of our thriller. A powerful bank, a vault that may not hold what it should, and a wave of delivery requests that it cannot easily fulfill without causing its own ruin. How did JP Morgan get into this position? Was it overconfidence? A miscalculation? Or is this just how the system was designed to work? And more importantly, what happens next? This is part one of the story, the mystery of the empty vault. In the next part, we will rewind time. We will see exactly how this trap was built, piece by piece, back when silver was cheap and the future seemed easy to control. The year is roughly 2010. The world's financial system has just survived a heart attack, the 2008 crisis. Governments are scrambling to make new rules to ensure such a collapse never happens again. In the world of commodities, of oil, gold, and silver, a crucial decision is made. The market is too wild, they say. Too many players. We need order. We need stability. So, the regulators do something dramatic. They drastically reduce the number of major players allowed to control the flow of physical silver. They appoint a handful of powerful, too big to fail, banks as the main custodians. The goal? To create a calm, orderly market. And JPMorgan, with its immense strength and reputation, becomes not just a player, but the player. The king of the silver vault. Imagine this. You are made the official keeper of the town's water supply. You control the main reservoir. Everyone who needs water has to come through you. This is the position JPMorgan found itself in. It was a golden age for them. Back then, silver was cheap. For years, it traded between $15 and $20 an ounce. For a giant like JPMorgan, this was perfect. They could buy massive amounts, millions of ounces, without breaking a sweat. They stored it in their vaults. They became the market's warehouse. And here is the most important part of the trap. They got used to it. They built their entire strategy on two beliefs that seemed like eternal truths. First, that the price of silver would always stay low and under their control. Second, that almost no one would ever want the actual, physical metal. Why would they? The modern financial system runs on paper, on digital numbers and contracts. It is faster, easier, and cheaper. A contract for silver is just a ticker symbol on a screen, a tool for speculation. Taking delivery of 10,000 pounds of metal is a hassle. So, the bank's vaults were treated like a static library, where the books never actually needed to be checked out. This is when JPMorgan, perhaps without even realizing it, began to build the walls of its own cage. They started selling more and more promises for silver, those paper contracts. They were confident. After all, they were the reservoir keeper. They had the silver. Or at least, they had enough silver for the tiny number of people who might ask for it. But economics has a funny way of challenging confidence. A slow awakening began. Some investors, bloggers, and analysts started asking a heretical question. What if the paper promises are just paper? What if the real value is in the thing itself? They called it the physical squeeze idea. A simple, powerful concept. If everyone with a paper contract asked for the real metal at the same time, the system would break. It was seen as a fringe theory, a fantasy, until it wasn't. The first signs were small. A hedge fund here, a wealthy family office there, would demand delivery. Not to sell it later for a digital profit, but to take the shiny bars and store them in a private vault. To own the thing, not the promise of the thing. Each time this happened, a tiny, almost invisible amount of silver left JPMorgan's available pile. The mountain in the vault was still huge, but the pile meant for immediate delivery began to look less huge. And JPMorgan, comfortable in its role as king, likely saw this as a minor irritation. A few odd customers causing paperwork. They did not see it as the first thread beginning to unravel, because they were still operating on the old rules. The rules where paper was what mattered, and physical metal was just a dormant asset in the basement. They failed to see that a new story was being written, a story where the promise and the thing being promised were becoming two very different entities. The bank was setting a trap with every extra paper contract it sold, while the key to that trap, the physical silver, was slowly, quietly, being carried away by the very few who read the fine print. The walls of the cage were now solid. The king was inside, still believing it ruled everything outside. All that was needed was for someone to slam the door shut. That moment is coming, and it revolves around a single, terrifying number, $60. We have called it the $60 trap. But that number is not magic. It is a trigger, a breaking point. Today, we reveal the brutal, simple mechanics of the device they now find themselves in. Think of it not as a market trend, but as a piece of financial engineering, one that has now turned against its creator. The problem is simple. JPMorgan needs physical silver to fulfill its promises. But the solution is impossible, because of two unbreakable laws of this market. Law number one, the law of the giant. JPMorgan is not a normal buyer. It is the market's largest player, its custodian, its warehouse. When JP Morgan needs to buy something, it is not shopping. It is declaring an emergency. Every trader, every hedge fund, every algorithm in the world is watching them. If they see JP Morgan entering the market to buy en masse, they do not see a customer. They see a signal, a blazing red signal that says, silver is scarce. The biggest bank is panicking. What happens next is not just a price increase. It is a stampede. Others will rush to buy silver before JP Morgan can, hoping to sell it back to the bank at a much higher price. This is called a short squeeze, but forget the jargon. Think of it as a crowd seeing one person desperately bidding for the last bottle of water in a desert. The price is no longer about water. It's about survival. Law number 2, the law of the promise. JP Morgan's own size works against it in a second, cruel way. They do not need just a little silver. They need a colossal amount, potentially tens or even hundreds of millions of ounces to feel secure. Buying even a fraction of this would move the price dramatically. Let's put this in simple math with easy numbers. Imagine the price of silver is $25 an ounce. If JP Morgan tries to buy 10 million ounces quietly, the price might jump to $30. But they need 100 million ounces. As they keep buying, the panic sets in. The price jumps to $40, then $50. Now, they are not paying $25 for the rest of the silver they need. They are paying $50, $60, or more. This is the spring in the trap. Every dollar the price rises makes the next ounce of silver they need more expensive. Their attempt to solve the problem makes the problem infinitely worse and more expensive. It is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. So why $60? Analysts see $60 per ounce as a critical pain threshold. At that price, the math breaks down completely. The cost to JP Morgan to cover all its potential promises becomes astronomical, a loss of billions upon billions. It is the point where the financial damage from buying becomes greater than the damage from not buying. It is the point where they are truly, completely stuck. They cannot move. This is the perfection of the trap. It uses the bank's own strength, its massive size, its market dominance, as the very mechanism that locks it in place. The king cannot leave the throne, because the moment he stands up, the throne room collapses. JP Morgan now has only bad choices, each worse than the last. Do nothing and hope deliveries slow down. This is a ticking clock. Try to buy slowly, in secret, almost impossible for a giant. Buy openly and trigger the financial avalanche. Self-destruction. There is no clean exit. The trap has snapped shut on their ankle. But a trapped giant does not just sit quietly. It thrashes. It tries to change the game. What happens when a force this powerful, caught in a mechanism this precise, begins to struggle? What does that struggle do to the world outside the trap, to the markets, to industries, and to everyday people? When something this large struggles, the ground shakes for everyone else. Today, we zoom out, far out. We follow the ripple from that single, wobbling silver domino. Because in our connected world, no crisis stays on a spreadsheet. It spills over. It becomes your problem, my problem, the world's problem. This is the domino effect. Domino 1, the real-world price tag. Silver is not just for investor vaults. It is in almost everything you own. It is the most conductive metal on Earth. It is in every smartphone, every solar panel, every medical device, every car's computer system. It is the silent ingredient of the modern age. Now, imagine its price does not just rise, but explodes. From $25 to $60 to who knows how high. What happens? The cost of making a smartphone jumps. The price of a solar panel for your roof climbs. The electronics in your new car get more expensive. This is not speculation. This is simple math. Industries would face a sudden, massive shock to their most important raw material. They have two choices: absorb the cost and lose money, or pass it on to you, the consumer. This trap, built in a Wall Street vault, just became a new line on your invoice. Domino 2, the trust vault cracks. The financial system does not run on money. It runs on trust. Trust that when you buy a share, you own it. Trust that when a bank makes a promise, it keeps it. JP Morgan is one of the pillars of that trust. If it is seen struggling to deliver on a basic promise, to give you the silver you paid for, what does that say about all the other promises? The complex ones? The ones holding up pensions, mutual funds, and retirement accounts? People will start asking a dangerous question. If I can't trust them with a bar of silver, what can I trust them with? A crack in trust is like a crack in a dam. It starts small, but the pressure of doubt can make it spread. Suddenly, everyone is checking their own contracts, their own investments. This nervousness can freeze markets, cause panicked selling in unrelated areas, and create a climate of fear. Fear is expensive for everyone. Domino 3, the investor rebellion. This saga is being watched closely by hedge funds, by everyday investors on forums, by rival traders. They are not just watching a bank's problem. They are seeing a live demonstration of a powerful idea. The paper world can break when it meets the physical world. This lesson will not be forgotten. It will encourage more people, not fewer, to ask for physical delivery of other commodities. If it works for silver, why not for copper or oil? It plants a seed of doubt that could change investor behavior for a generation, making the entire system of paper-based commodity trading more fragile, more expensive to run. This is where the ripple reaches your shore. Even if you never own a silver coin, you are connected. Your savings, if you have a pension fund or a 401k, it likely invests in commodities or the banks that trade them. Market chaos touches your future. The economy. A shock in a key industrial metal can slow down tech innovation, green energy projects, and manufacturing. That can mean less economic growth and fewer jobs. The lesson. This story teaches a fundamental economic principle that is suddenly very real. There is a difference between a financial promise and a tangible asset. One is a hope, the other is a thing. In a crisis, the gap between them is where fortunes are lost and systems are tested. We are no longer just watching a bank in a trap. We are watching a real-world stress test of our entire financial architecture. And the test is not over. A trapped animal is most dangerous when it sees no way out. What does a trillion-dollar bank do when every exit is blocked? Does it wait? Does it try to bend the rules? Does it force a new game entirely? What does a cornered king do? JPMorgan is not defeated. It is one of the most powerful financial entities in human history. It has lawyers, economists, lobbyists, and connections that reach into the very fabric of global finance. A trap, no matter how well designed, is still just a mechanism. And mechanisms can be broken, bypassed, or the rules can be changed. This is the endgame, not a battle of brute force, but a high-stakes game of strategy where every move is fraught with consequence. Let us examine the pieces left on the board and the few, difficult moves available. Move 1. The slow bleed. This is the quietest, most patient option. JPMorgan could try to fulfill delivery requests one by one, drip by drip, over years. They would scour the planet for silver not on the open market, private deals, unregistered bars, buying from miners directly, trying to avoid setting off the $60 price trigger. But this is a strategy of pain. It is expensive, nerve-wracking, and leaves them perpetually vulnerable. Every month, the threat of a sudden wave of delivery requests hangs over them. It is like living with a chronic illness. It saps strength, costs a fortune, and offers no cure. The market would watch, and the whispers of their weakness would never fully go away. Move 2. The market storm. This is the opposite. They could stop trying to be quiet. They could step into the open market and accept the avalanche. Let the price scream to $60, $80, $100. Take the catastrophic, multi-billion-dollar loss in one terrible quarter. Why would anyone do this? To kill the story, to pay the fine, close the book, and move on. It would be a historic, devastating financial event for the bank, a shock to shareholders, but it would, in theory, end the trap. The debt would be paid. The vaults would be empty, but so would their obligations. It is the nuclear option. It clears the board by setting it on fire. The fallout for the global economy, as we saw in Part 4, would be severe and unpredictable. Would their regulators and the government even let them do it? Move 3. The rule change. This is the most controversial and perhaps most likely move on the board. When you cannot win the game, you change the rules. JPMorgan could lobby, pressure, and argue that the system itself is broken, that the very idea of mass physical delivery is an archaic threat to modern finance. They could push for new regulations, changing the contract rules to make physical delivery harder or more expensive for the average investor, creating new, paper settlement methods that bypass metal entirely, paying out in cash even when the contract says physical delivery. arguing for force majeure, an act of God clause, claiming market circumstances have made their promise impossible to keep. This move does not escape the trap. It attempts to redefine what the trap is. It shifts the problem from a failure of the bank to a flaw in the system. It would be a fierce political and legal war, fought in quiet offices and congressional hearings. The public would see it as the powerful changing the rules to save themselves. The loss would not be financial, but something perhaps more valuable in the long run: legitimacy. The unmove, waiting for a savior. There is a fourth option: do nothing different. Hope for a miracle. Hope a massive new silver mine is discovered tomorrow. Hope a technological breakthrough makes silver obsolete, crashing its price. Hope a rival institution fails, and they can buy its silver quietly in the chaos. This is not a strategy. It is a prayer. And in the game of high finance, prayers are not a plan. The camera slowly pushes in on the fallen knight. The light changes, casting a long, distorted shadow that looks like a prison bar across the board. Narrator: so, what is the conclusion of Economics Explained? This story was never just about silver. It is a case study in power, promise, and consequence. It reveals the fragile bridge between the paper world of finance and the physical world of things. JPMorgan did not walk into a trap in the dark. They built a throne in a room that slowly, over a decade, became a cell. Their endgame, therefore, is not about finding a secret door. It is about choosing what to sacrifice: money, stability, or trust. They will likely choose a painful mix of move 1 and move 3, a slow bleed while quietly trying to reshape the rules. The storm will continue, but it may become a managed, bureaucratic drizzle. And the final, lasting lesson is not for them. It is for every person who listens to this story. It is the oldest lesson in economics, made new again. A promise is only as strong as the willingness and the ability to keep it. When promises outnumber the things promised, the system is no longer built on rock, but on a hope. And hope is a shaky foundation for anything, especially your future. Look at your own world, your savings, your assets, your contracts. Ask yourself the simple, powerful question this whole saga begs: what do you truly own? And what is merely a promise?